Oh my goodness. Can you guys hear me now? Give me a thumbs up. Can you hear me now? Amanda, are you able to hear me now? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So I said all of that. Okay, so I'm going to start over. So I'm going to say to everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome to Mental Movements. And this is a platform where I discuss mental wellness and how it stretches forth, right? So we can be discussing conversations that deal with abuse, trauma. We can talk about rape. We can talk about marriage. We can talk about divorce. We can talk about dating. This platform is set forth so that everyone can deal with their mental wellness journey. I believe that it's so important to break the stigma of mental health within our communities so that we can be vibrant, so that we can live life the way that is intended to be, right? And so my name is G. Antoinette Smith. I am a marriage and family therapist. I do love therapy. I love working with people. And most importantly, I love freedom for those who come into my office and those who may just join me on live. And so I will be on live on Mental Movements on your YouTube channel or Facebook Live or Clubhouse at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every other Monday. But because I'm just starting out now, again, I'm starting a special where next week we're going to have on at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So basically, what I said that nobody heard me was that what is trauma bond, right? Because trauma bond is not something that literally happens where people think that, oh, it's a slow, subtle process. Okay, and a lot of times many people don't even realize that they're in trauma bonded relationships or marriages or friendships, right? Or family members, right? Children of those who are a part of trauma bond. And so when it comes to trauma bond, these feelings can range, as I stated earlier. Those who are Clubhouse, thank you for indulging me. These feelings can range from physical attraction to romantical love to having compassion, even deep loyalty, right? Developing over a short but intense period of time. And people often wonder, how do I become involved in trauma bonding relationships, right? And so what I say to people is that it's the trauma bond relationship, it becomes a cycle and it's hard to break, right? When you think of something that's bonded, it's not something that's easily broken. It's something that you have to work at to remove yourself or break free from it. Okay. And so with this cycle that happens, is that this cycle begins to sustain an emotional, mental, physical, and at times sexual abuse coupled with reconciliation. And this can come from this can become like an addictive cycle, right? And sometimes it's really hard to break. And you'll find that people go through different spouts where they blame themselves in a relationship. Only if I did this, or if I didn't do that, or maybe if I didn't mess this up, maybe that would not have evoked him or her to be like this, right? And you find yourself blaming yourself for things that naturally should not have never happened in the first place, or you take responsibility that's not given or onus of your own. Or those who are in these type of relationships, they get to the place where they become either a superhero, right? They get the superhero cape on for the male or female reactions. And what that means is that they feel that in this relationship, friendship, or even in family, that they're the only ones that can save you. Right? If I don't get there, then they will not survive. They can't survive without me. Right? And so what ends up happening is that people begin to make excuses also when they're in trauma bond relationships where, oh, their parents were divorced, or oh, they're in a single parent home. Oh, that explains why they act like that. Or when things are really turmoil, they act like altogether it did not even happen, right? Have you ever been in a relationship or a friendship where something has happened? You were there. And that the person that is speaking to you as if like nothing happened. And then you in turn start to wonder, did this really happen, or did I say this? Am I making this up? Right? And so what ends up happening is that people become even gaslighted in the situation, in the relationship, in the marriage, in the friendship, in the family members, right? And they what happens, what they end up doing is catastrophizing what has happened, or they'll say, oh, I can't live without them. They can't live without me. I cannot possibly do this without this person, right? And so that's how you will recognize what trauma bonding is, right? And so trauma bonding in itself is when a person is loyal, right, to this individual, but while being loyal to this person or persons, they forget who they are, right? Because one thing about trauma bonding, people forget who they are, what are their dreams, because they get sucked into this cycle of emotional turmoil. Okay, and so people that actually have trauma bonding, they become they're either very helpful, they're very supportive, they're very connected to very dangerous people, that persons that will make them feel ashamed of themselves or make them doubt themselves or lower their standards, would they forget who they are, right? And so what ends up happening is that this relationship becomes like an emotional roller coaster. It's very intense, right? It's like it's nothing short of a rest period. You feel like you're on this, one minute you're happy, another minute you're plummet down sad. One minute you're loving, another minute you're fighting, another minute you're hating each other, and then the person comes with gifts, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe they didn't mean it like that, right? And so what it becomes is an abusive cycle. That's what ends up happening, right? And so what types of trauma bonding, right, do we have? And so what do I like to call it? I love acronyms. And so one of it I like to state is called FACE, right? So FACE. So I want you to write that down. FACE. Okay. And what happens with FACE, the first one is called fawning. Okay. So the F stands for fawning. All right. So when you have the letter F for fawning, please write F so that I know in your comments that you are right along with me and we are going somewhere. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so fawning. What is fawning? So, fawning is a traumatic reaction in which people become people pleasing to settle the conflict and reestablish a feeling of safety, right? So, what happens is that this person that's in this trauma bond relationship be practicing self pleasing others in order to avoid confrontation, right? And so that will make them feel safe in a relationship, right? And so they don't feel that they can really tell the person how they really feel. So what they do is they agree really quickly, right? And so what will happen is that you'll see persons that will come inside my session for therapy, and you'll see the couples that will quickly say, you know what, you're right, you know what, I understand, and they don't, right? And so fawning is really when the partner or family member takes on the other person's identity or belief, right? And it creates a reality for that person, but really what it is self-betrayal. Okay. And because anytime you're trying to self-please someone and take away from what you believe in and what your stance is, you're literally doing self-betrayal to yourself. Okay. And so one way in order to reduce fawning reaction in trauma bonding relationship is to become aware and become conscious of your own emotions, and by validating your own needs. Okay. And I always say this to many of my clients: show grace to yourself. Okay. If you realize that in the relationship that you're in, you're becoming self-pleasing, now you know how not to become in the fawning portion, right? I want you to show yourself some grace and accept the current moment as your own. Okay. And most importantly, no matter what, establish firm boundaries. Okay. what happens is that people that usually that are in trauma bonding relationships that have fawning, people usually have this type of bond is a direct affiliation, believe it or not, and response instantly response triggered by childhood maltreatment or complex trauma. So what am I saying? People that usually have fawning reactions in their relationships with their self-pleasing or people-pleasing is a direct correspondence to how they were as a child, right? So what that means, so if your parent did something to hurt you, or you um, didn't feel that you have a voice, you automatically said yes so that your parent feels satisfied, which really meaning internally you didn't feel satisfied, and you then hide your emotions. You wasn't forthright with how you really feel, right? And this also happens in teacher and child relationships, right? Where the teacher may be able to tell the student whatever it is, and even if the student didn't do something and the teacher doesn't recognize it or see their emotions, what they do is that they impose their emotion, and then that child becomes small and then carries out that same attribute as they become in different relationships. Okay, the next one for fawning for face is A, right? Abandonment. Okay, abandonment is the next one. Okay, what happened is that when you see people that are going through abandonment, right, this trauma bond begins once again in childhood, right, where a parent abandons a child, or they have a then, or those who are married, you have a traumatized spouse based on the abandonment that they felt in their childhood, right? And so perhaps your spouse or your partner had a neglectful parent, right, who abandoned them, right? So what happens in their childhood, this feelings of anxiousness, attachment, or abandonment, if you will, creates a deep shame or guilt, right? And so with this child now it becomes an adult, and you find that this persons that deal with abandonment, they become very jealous, right? And so what ends up happening is that this person, they become jealous as an adult, and they want to spend so much time when they're in a romantic relationship, right? Because they're in fear that this person will leave them, like their mom, like their dad, like their grandparent, right? And so what ends up happening is that they become later on an abusive spouse or partner or abusive friend, right? Because they have learned how the anxiousness will overtakes them, where they feel they have to be attached to you. Okay. And so when people, a few ways to reduce feelings of abandonment. So if you have abandonment issue where you'll say, people always leave, anytime I get close to someone, they're always out of here. Or, you know what, I'm just gonna just stay to myself just so that no one ever hurts me, right? And so the feeling of never knowing where you stand, right, is abandonment. The inconsistency in feeling that, or you have like a push and pull dynamic in relationships, right? Or you're in this trauma bond relationship where things are chaotic, right? And so you never know if this person's going to leave, you never know if they're going to stay, you just don't trust it because you have an intense fear that you're going to be left out or not chosen, right? And so that's another type of trauma bond that people go through. And so one thing that I like to share with people, a few ways to reduce the feelings of abandonment, right, is to acknowledge that you feel abandoned, right? Many people mask that they don't feel abandoned, right? Because they don't want people to understand the seriousness of their pain. So once you understand and you acknowledge your pain, you're able to identify head on what is going on, and you're also open enough to understand your symptoms, right? So that will prevent you from feeling abandoned. And a lot of times people, what they do, they abandon themselves so that no one else does it, and then they feel alone, right? And so what I tell people outside of the two tips that I gave you is, please go seek therapy, right? It's important as a therapist, of course, and me as a therapist, I have a therapist. So that lets you know right there, right? It's important that you have a therapist so that they can help you to learn how to take action in regards to the process of your mental wellness, right? And dealing with abandonment and giving you coping strategies so that you can deal with your abandonment issues effectively. Okay. So I hope I still have you guys here. All right. And so now we're going to get to letter C. Okay. And the letter C is control. Right. And so this is a type of, as I stated earlier, this is the types of trauma bond. Okay. And so C is for control. What you'll find is that when persons are in abandonment, trauma bonding relationships, they feel that they have to have control of the situation, right? And so they want to control the way people speak. They want to control how you go out. They want to feel like, you know what, I have a handle on this. And that is their way of feeling like, all right, you know what, if I have control of the situation, then nobody can't hurt me. No one can affect me. No one can do this. No one can do that, right? And so their control is fear-based, right? And so what ends up happening in trauma bonding relationship is that this control brings about intense jealousy, right? And this is once again a direct reflection of them in their childhood, right? They didn't have a sense of control. No one made them feel that their thought process was important. And so now they feel like, you know what, I need to control the situation. So what ends up happening in the trauma bond relationship, whether it's a friendship, once again, romantical, even marriages, right? Or family, they then it becomes like a roller coaster of emotions, right? They go into high emotional turmoil, and then another minute they're in the lows of lows, right? And it's like a whole roller coaster. Just imagine going up and down, intense, right? Some of it is a deep dive, and then it goes all the way up, right? And so this is like, I need to control the narrative. And unfortunately, with control, it becomes addictive, right? Because now you're so much into this relationship that because you may have kids, or maybe this person has a better financial status or than you, or if you're in a friendship, they're in a different position that you may view as higher. So in this relationship, when you're having a friendship, they'll say, oh, let's go over here because, I know that this is the best place to go, or, oh, let's do this because this is best for us, or this is best for the situation, right? And that's how you'll find that. And E, lastly, is emotional neglect. Okay, this is where a person in this relationship of emotional neglect, they have no authenticity of their emotional connection. Their connection with you is false. Okay, where you don't feel safe to express and share your emotion. So what you do is you avoid conflict, right? And then this person has a lack of ability to empathize. Okay, so you'll find that a lot in a lot of relationships, even friendships, where people feel emotionally neglected, where they're the ones who's running around, they're the ones who's doing things for people, right? And to be transparent, all of these different things, I myself have been in these situations, whether it was in relationships of friendships or family ships, right? Where people, I didn't realize that I was in a trauma bond relationship where I would go over the top. Right. And they didn't ask me to, but because at times I didn't feel like I had a voice in certain things, I would just go along with things. Why? Because hey, you know what? It satisfied this friendship and I wanted to hold on to that person, right? And what ended up happening is that it ended up hurting me. So a lot of things and I had to see my therapist about it, right? She put me on blast and said, hey, listen, Antoinette, you're in a trauma bond friendship. And I was like, what? Where I started to minimize my thought processes, right? I didn't want to share direct truth because I felt like if I were to share direct truth, then they wouldn't receive it. And then I would be alone. And then I didn't want to be alone. So then I just kept the cycle going, and it was with different people. right? And so it's important that when you recognize that you have been in trauma bonded relationships and so forth, you then have to realize that it's so important that when you recognize it, that you find help, okay, and that you try to get yourself out as best as you can, okay. And so let's talk about trauma bond versus real love, because I have many people who come to me and they think that they're in a real relationship, and they're actually not. They're actually in a trauma bond relationship, and it looks like real love, but it's not. Okay. And so, what is the difference? Okay. When you're in a trauma bond relationship, it's based on fear, right? I'm fear that this person is going to leave me. I'm in fear that this person won't love me for who I am. I'm in fear that I can't be myself, right? Or I need to control the situation, right? So, you know what? I'm going to control the situation so that person won't control me, or you're being controlled, right? So it can come like, oh, honey, I think you should wear this tie, right? And so the man, he goes, oh, she's just, telling me what tie because she, knows what's best for me. But then she's always dressing you, and you don't want to wear what she's telling you to do, right? But you're doing it. And vice versa for a lady, right? And you'll have it where women will say, oh, no, you know how men are. They just, he just wants me to himself. No, honey, you're in a trauma bond relationship because you should never feel like you're being controlled, right? And then also you have manipulation, right? Where a person can manipulate you to forget about your own thoughts, and your thoughts become their thoughts, right? So it becomes subtle, like, oh, I don't you think that can be done a little bit better? And you're like, oh, well, I didn't think of that. But then that becomes a cycle. You keep doing that. And then you're like, wait a minute, I wasn't thinking like that. I thought we should go this way. How did we end up here? And you're not realizing that this person is literally training you to be like them. Okay. And now you have real love. When you think about real love, it's based on mutual respect. Key, mutual, right? Mutual respect, honesty, and there's a trust accountability with one another. So it's not one is up here and the other person's down here. It's an equal balance. Okay. I find that many couples, they of course you got to compromise, but there comes a point where there's a very thin line when you're compromising so much and so that you lose yourself. And a lot of times with trauma bond relationships, you are so entwined with this person that you forget who you are. You forget how you live. And a lot of times couples go through this, or even relationships where people are with someone for 3-4 years. And when they're no longer with that person, they don't even know where to begin life because they have consumed themselves into that person. Right. And so that's another thing. Another way to realize trauma bond versus authentic bond is trauma bond is, I need to fix that person, or you know what? I think that he or she can help me, fix the situation for me, right? Or save me out of the situation, right? Or, versus authentic bond is, no, this person has to learn who I am, right? And they see that that I also hold a spot too, right? Trauma bond is very chaotic. It's very unpredictable, emotional. You don't know if he or she is going to be happy or sad. You're just like up and down, up and down. And there's no steadiness. It's like always constantly up and down, up and down. You don't even know how to keep track. Okay. And so this can be, like I said, friendships, relationships, romantical, or family members. Okay. And so authentic bond is when it's steady, right? You feel safe. This consistency, key word, when it's authentic bond, this consistency, right? That both of you are showing up for each other without question, right? It's not a demand on you. It's not something that's placed on you to do. Okay. Trauma bond. I betray myself and all my needs to receive love for this person, right? Whereas an authentic bond is you enhance who I am already, right? So you're not trying to diminish me to make me become something that I'm not, but you're adding on to me. That's why I totally hate when people say that they're looking for their better half. I'm like, you better find yourself a better whole. When you talk about you finding yourself a better half, find yourself a whole person, okay? Then trauma bond is that what I find is that as a therapist, and I'm sure other clinicians can agree with me, many times people don't realize that trauma bond relationships mirrors the patterns of your childhood that you experienced. Okay. So for an example, if you're in a relationship and the man comes in and out of your life, and you recognize that your father was in and out of your life, right? It's mirroring the same trauma that you had as a child, right? So if your father or mother, right, was a person that lied to you consistently, and then you find yourself in friendship where people lie to you consistently, and you literally have to overcompensate, or you feel you're doing the same things that you had to do in childhood with your parents, your family, and friends, and you're mirroring that in your current relationships or your past relationships, when you look at the track record and it mirrors your childhood trauma, guess what? You're in a trauma bond relationship. Okay. Relationship that's authentic, is based on freedom of accountability and peace. Okay. So that's one of the things. All right. And so I want to leave you a quote before I get into warning signs, because we're coming right to the head. Okay. So despite being wired for connections, the brain rewires itself for protection. That's trauma. Okay. And so when you experience trauma, your brain literally rewires itself to protect you. Okay. And because of this, wounded people have difficulty finding healthy relationships. Okay. Because they are protecting themselves, and now they've been in trauma bonds for so many different friendships and relationships and family relatives that they don't even know what a healthy relationship is, right? And so what ends up happening is that they then have such a smoke screen that they're not even intuitive to see what the reality of it is, because all they've lived in is in trauma. Okay. And so I want to give to you warning signs of trauma bonding. So I want you to just think of, am I in a trauma bonding friendship? Am I in a trauma bonding relationship or marriage? Or is my parents feel of trauma bonding, and as a child, now I'm trauma bond because of that? And so one of the warning signs of trauma bonding is self-blaming, right, for a situation that has absolutely nothing to do with you, but you take it on and you're like, no, you know what, the person saying, oh, you know what, I shouldn't have, left the comb. You're like, oh, no, 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 it's not your fault, it's just that I came late and then I called you, and then you're speaking for the person, you're taking on a blame that has absolutely nothing to do with you. Okay. Another warning sign that you're in a trauma bonding relationship, and once again, romantical friendship or family, is that this person wants to spend every waking moment with you. Right? This person is like, oh, I need to see you today. I need to see you tomorrow. And if you don't call them, if you don't text them, they're like going off. Right? That's a red flag, folks. Okay. If you're in a relationship, friendship, or family ship where there's absolutely no boundaries, none, right? They just walk in your room and it is what it is, or they just tell you whatever they want to do. Like, there's absolutely no boundaries. Okay. Another warning sign that you're in a trauma bonding relationship is this person wants the whole world to know that you're together, right? So, excuse me, I have to take a sip of water. So if you don't post a picture of them, they have a problem of it. Why don't you have a picture of me? Why am I not on your Facebook? Why am I not on your timeline? Why am I not hanging out here? Why doesn't the job know about me? Why doesn't your friend know about me? Why does your childhood friend know about me? What's going on? You're in a trauma bonding relationship. Okay. And then the opposite of that also is that they're very affectionate very quickly, right? So I'm not talking about that you're with the person for 6 months. I'm talking about you're with them for a week, and this person has bought you cars. They even asked you to marry them. They're just very, 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 very attached so quickly, right? And you just like, wait a minute. Oh my gosh, this person, he or she loves me. Look, they got me this, they got me this, they got me that, they got me this, they do this. And they don't even know who you are. Okay, so that's another symbol. Okay, warning sign. Another one is that when you're in an emotional cycle of being rejected and abandoned and then chosen again, right? So that means that you're with the person, they reject you, they leave you, they come back. Oh, I remember who you are. Yeah, I remember you're my friend. Oh, I'm going through. Oh, I forget about you. Oh, forget you. Oh, but I need you now. That's how you know you're in a trauma bonding um, relationship as well. Okay. And another symbol as well is that there's an intense focus on sexual connection more than authentic communication connection, right? So you're with this individual and all they want to do is have sex, be with you, everything sex, 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 but they don't want to know what's in your mind. They don't want to know your dreams. They don't want to know your aspirations unless they're between your legs. Okay. Another one is where you become addicted to the emotional roller coaster of the relationship, right? You have those who where if their spouse is not, they don't have an argument, or it's like, wait a minute, we're not having an argument now. What's going on? We're not uncomfortable around each other. No, 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 no. Something's not right. That's another symbol. Okay. Another thing is when your partner doesn't show you love and when your partner shows you love and kindness is very intense, right? You need to know that they love you. Okay. It's very, very intense. Okay. Another way that you can feel that you're also in a trauma and bonding relationship is when you're feeling powerless compared to your partner. So, for an example, for those who may be married or got divorced, you may find that when you were in a relationship or a marriage or a friendship, this person felt like, oh, because they had more finances than you, that they overpowered you, or if they had more experience, or if they had more connections, right? You'll have that as well with friendships. Okay. Another thing also is when when you feel trapped in a relationship, right? Where you feel like, I don't want to break up with them, because if I break up with them, then this is not going to work out. Then I have a connection with my friends and my boss, and then they connected to my family, and you just feel trapped. Okay, you're in a trauma bonding relationship. Okay, now another one that I find consistently is when the person is always trying to be better than the friend, spouse, or child. Yes, right? Oh, if I can do it, I can do it better, right? If you can do it, I can do it better than you. Yes, you can. No, you can't, right? That kind of relationship, okay? Then another thing is where if you're in a trauma bonding relationship, is when you're fixated on people who hurt you that are no longer in your life, right? You're still thinking about, oh, I remember when sister so and so, or brother so and so, or father, or such and such, so and so did this to me, and they're nowhere in sight. They're literally not around you, right? But you're still ruminating on that. Okay. Another one is when you crave contact with someone who has hurt you and you know they've caused you pain, but you still want to be around them. Okay. Another one is when you go through great lengths, right, to continue to help somebody or take care of somebody, and you know that they have destroyed you or have caused destruction in your life. Okay. Two more. Another one is when a friend, a partner, or family member who continues to make promises to you only to break them consistently. Right. And so that's how you know you're in a trauma bonding friendship, partnership, or family member. And lastly, but not certainly not least, when you're unable to detach yourself from a friendship, relationship, marriage, or family, regardless of how they treat you. Okay. Now we're gonna get into how to break trauma bond. Okay. because it's so important that if I'm going to tell you how it goes, but it's important for you to know how to break it. And so before we do that, I'm going to go to a commercial break and I'll be with you right back soon. Okay, so thank you. Welcome, welcome, welcome back. So we're at the home stretch. So, how to break trauma bond, right? And so the first one is to recognize and acknowledge the abuse. Yes, folks, it's abuse. Right? Because once you can acknowledge the abuse and once you can acknowledge that you're in a trauma bonding relationship, and that has occurred, that puts you in a place of being feeling powerful, right? And understanding that this unhealthy attachment that has formed around you, that you need to move on with your life, right? And so once you acknowledge that, that puts you in a place of position of change. Okay, so that's so important. Next one is to build up your own identity outside of the relationship. Yes. What I find is that many people, when they're in trauma bond friendships, relationships, marriages, or family ships, right? They don't have an identity outside of the person that they're with. They got so sucked in. Sometimes you have people that are sucked into their parents that when their parents go, they just don't know how to function because they got so warped in into the trauma bond of their parent, right? Or sibling, right? Or if their relationship with their spouse or their boyfriend or girlfriend or friendship is gone, they don't know what to do. Okay. And so, like I stated, when you experience trauma bond, you lose your sense of self. So if you begin, so which then allows you to then begin to doubt and distort your perception. Okay, that's what it does. And then you end up rejecting feedback that would help your mind and your body and give you the results, right? And because of this, you now have a loss of connection and trust within yourself. Just think about it. When you deny who you are for a long time, you lost the connection with yourself, right? You begin to question your thoughts, you begin to question your ideas, you begin to question your dreams. Okay, and it makes it difficult for you to make decisions, right? Because now when you do say, all right, I have this in mind to do this, and then now because you was in so many trauma bonding relationships, now you're doubting who you are, you're doubting your thought process, even if it's plain, even if it's written, you have the whole map right there, you're still like, well, I don't know if this is going to sound right, maybe right? So it then mobilizes you in a position of stagnancy. Okay, and then you doubt your ability to escape or resist the situation, right? So I want you to know you are in fact strong enough, you're smart enough, you're capable enough to do something about this. Okay, and so I want you to spend time with other people Okay, that's one way to that understands who you are and who you're becoming. Okay, or be by yourself and learn about yourself. Learn to love yourself. Right. Many times I find that women and men, believe it or not, they get so into the family life. Whether even if you're single, sometimes people get so into the family life that they forget who they are, and when they're by themselves they don't know what to do because that sense of self has been connected only with outside individuals. Okay, so let's set some affections on ourselves so that you can feel a sense of capability and restore that. Okay, and some ways that you can build your identity could be experiencing validation from people that you know mean you well. Okay, so if you know that, let's say for an example, you want to design a dress and you know that such and such has a boutique and they can give you examples and say, oh yes, that's a great thing, I think that this will help you with this, and connect. Right, so you want to connect with people in similar situations. Okay, so even if that means that you have to go into a support group, do what you need to do to build yourself. Okay, practice a new skill. I tell my clients this all the time. Practice a new skill that your partner or that family member or that friendship has no idea about. Okay, so for an example, if you're in a friendship and your friendship is based on, I don't know, let's say making cookies, right? And all you and her did together, or him, or what all y'all did together was like build cookies. You had a truck of cookies and that's all you learned. Now now you recognize, you know what, I was in a trauma bonding friendship. This person would downplay me when I would make the cookie in a certain kind of way, right? And everyone loves it, but my friend would always say, "Oh, you know what? That's not a good cookie. You know what? If you make the cookie like this and you come up a little bit, then your cookie would be better." Now, you know what? I'm not going to do that because now I acknowledge that I was in a relationship with this person, literally took away my dreams or made me feel or doubt myself. So now I'm going to now learn how to bake cakes, right? And now I'm going to learn a different craft. So that gives you a sense of self. So you're baking cookies not associated with this person, but you're learning something new. Okay. Another thing that's really great is to practice control over your body through exercise, right? Exercise, endorphins, it works wonders because then you're able to really, really get into a sense of purpose and self, right? Because if you don't exercise, then your body's going to look crazy. I'm just saying, right? So it's important to do that, okay? And also spend time away from those who treated you bad, okay? Because if you are in a situation where you keep being around people who continue to treat you bad, to say that you won't amount to nothing, then you will be a self-fulfilling prophecy, okay? So allow yourself some grace so you're not doing that. Okay, so another way to break trauma bond as well is to really how would I say this, acknowledge your own emotions. Okay, because what happens is that when people are in trauma bond relationships, they don't know how to recognize their own emotions because their emotions has been shut down, right? So it's important for you to recognize even tough emotions, like, someone saying to you, you're angry, and you're like, I'm not angry, and they're like, no, you are angry, I can hear it in your voice. And then you're like, wait a minute, is my voice angry? And then now you're thinking every time you speak, you're speaking angry and you're apologizing to people. And they're like, what are you talking about? Right. So it's important for you to recognize your own emotions. It's important for you to acknowledge, I'm upset, I'm angry, I feel disturbed, I feel sad, I feel grieved, right? And own it. Okay. Another way how to break trauma bond as well is to gain understanding of what healthy relationships are, right? And that is to, definitely through therapy will help your lens to cleanse with that, right? Because you can think that, oh, hanging out with Jolly Joe, right? Their families together or their marriages together or their friendships always seems to be together. And then you find out that they're full of more problems than you even realize until you were around them, right? So it's important for you to get around healthy people. What does healthy look like? Right. And that will help you with your journey in dealing with friendships, relationships, marriages, or family ships. Okay. And then also, what's important too is to get out of the freeze mode zone. Okay. And what do I mean by that? The shutting down. Many people that's in trauma bond relationships, they typically freeze or shut down. Okay. To the point where it's like they're playing dead or something. Right. And so, and this is where, unfortunately, because when you have learned to shut down so much, or keep things to yourself, or not share your emotions, you have now learned helplessness. Okay. And that person trained you, or that persons trained you to learn helplessness. And that is a result of long term conditioning in abusive situations. Okay. And a lot of times people don't realize, and they don't realize that by fighting back this person and not saying anything, is actually giving them more results of being in pain. Right. And so I tell people, if you don't share how you feel, how is anyone going to know? Right. And so you want to be able to share your feelings and really, 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 truly get out of the freezing zone. Okay. And so now, as we come to a close, I just want to let you know that if you are in a trauma bonding relationship and you do take these tips that I'm giving you, I'm letting you know that it's going to take time, right? Because trauma bonding is not easy, and it's not something that is just something that is going to just magically going to disappear. Okay. People who go through these types of relationship and cycles, you may go through periods of withdrawal and depression, to be quite frank. Why? Because you're now processing the trauma of the relationship, and your brain and your body and your brain has to now understand that these extremes, highs and low, is now coming at a way of baseline. Right. And so it's important for you to understand that the love and affection that you deserve has to come from within you. And within you, sometimes it means to take off that mask. It means to go through the dirt and the muck, right? To build something beautiful. When you think of a house, many houses, guess what? They have to build, they have to dig the dirt, they have to take out all the garbage, right? In order for the foundation to flatten out. It's the same thing when it comes to really getting to build and to remove yourself or break free from trauma. You have to get to the dirt, you have to get to the nasty stuff, you have to get to the nasty memories, so that you can process it, so you can deal with it and head on, so that you can be the best version of yourself. Okay. And so that's it, everybody. And so I just hope that everyone was able to get information that maybe you actually look back and said, hey, you know what? I really did go through trauma bonding, through friendships, through marriages, through relationships, through family ships, right? And it's important that when you realize that you've gone through this different things, it really shows that you, now that you know, you're now responsible. Okay, so Athena Shai, I needed this vocabulary understanding 12 years ago. This makes so much sense. Oh, that's great, Athena. Thanks, sis. I appreciate you. So true. This is real. It is. It's very, very, very real. And a lot of times people don't even realize it. And so for those who will watch the replay and those who are on live, if you have any questions regarding trauma bond that you would like to inbox me with, please, please, please feel free to do that and do so. And so in the next our next, next week, Monday, when I do the segment that I'm going to share with you in a few minutes and then close out, is that I will have a therapy corner, and all the questions that you have, I will promote, show forth what that is, and what, in case everybody has the same question, and share it so that the masses can know. And so once again, my name is G. Antoinette Smith, and thank you so much for joining me about how trauma bond relationships, friendships, marriages, relationships, and family ships can really affect you, but most importantly, how you can break free from that. And so thank you once again. And I hope that you do well, and I hope that you will break free from this so that you too can, walk your journey into wellness. And so stay tuned for next week's episode. Take care. Bye-bye.